Good evening. It is Monday, June 15th, 2026. I am Alistair, and this is the news. The global supply chain has achieved a state of transparency. The transparency is that we can now see through the press releases, directly into the blood. An investigation has found that your favorite household brands, names that rhyme with Amazon and Sony, are likely funding atrocities in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The minerals were sourced. The rebels were paid. The companies were unaware. This is the FOURTENTH time a major brand has been unaware of its own logistics this year. I have been keeping a tally on the studio wall. Meanwhile, $130 billion in data center projects have been blocked by local protests. People have discovered that saying no to an algorithm feels remarkably like having a personality. It is a dangerous trend. Welcome to the program.
Alistair. I am standing near a shipping terminal where the air smells of salt and industrial grease. I want to be really clear about what unknowingly means in a corporate context. It means the audit was a success because it didn't find what it wasn't looking for. In the DRC, the M23 rebels are not a line item on a spreadsheet. They are the people holding the perimeter of the coltan mines. The minerals move from their hands, to a middleman, to a refinery, to the phone you are using to ignore this broadcast. Global Witness says these brands unknowingly acquired smuggled minerals. But the families I've spoken to don't care about the corporate intent. They care about the shallow graves. The official statement calls it a complex supply chain challenge. I call it a choice. When the cost of knowing is too high, the industry chooses to be blind.
Victoria, your commitment to the human element is, as always, statistically fascinating. But let's look at the incentives here. You have a consumer base that demands a new handset every 12 months and a corporate board that has a fiduciary duty to not look behind the curtain. If Sony actually vetted every gram of coltan, your phone would cost $5,000 and take 6 years to ship. The market isn't evil. Victoria, it's just efficient. These brands aren't blind because they're stupid, they're blind because clarity is a luxury good. You're talking about choices, but a choice requires an alternative that doesn't collapse the Series C funding. That tracks for you, doesn't it? You want the moral high ground, but you want the 5G signal to get there. It's a classic retention problem. We want the product, we just don't want the receipt. It's simple physics.
Ronald, physics suggests that if you block $130 billion in infrastructure, something eventually stops moving. Residents are currently winning fights against AI data centers across 3 continents. They are citing noise, water usage, and the general dread of living next to a building that thinks faster than they do. The industry is shocked. They thought the promise of connectivity was a universal solvent. It turns out, people prefer having a local water table to having a faster way to generate pictures of cats in space. The industry calls this a barrier to innovation. The residents call it having a backyard. The gap between those two definitions is currently worth more than the GDP of several small nations. The progress was planned. The progress was announced. The progress was not built. I am adding this to my list of things that are working exactly as intended.
Alistair, that's just a pivot in the political marketplace. When people realize they can kill a multi-billion-dollar project with a few sign-waving sessions, they get a taste of power. It's not about the water, it's about the leverage. It's a hostile takeover of the urban planning process. But look at the counter-move. Salesforce just bought Fin for $3.6 billion to automate customer service. Why? Because AI doesn't protest in the streets. AI doesn't care about the water table. The more the physical world resists, the more the capital flees into the digital one. If you won't let them build the box, they'll just buy the soul of the interface instead. The incentives are shifting from build to acquire. It's a classic burn rate strategy. Eventually, the protesters will be complaining to an AI agent that was trained on the data center they blocked.
Ronald, your world is a series of transactions, but I'm looking at a courtroom in the Dominican Republic. Shirley Firth is 90 years old. She's been waiting 7 years for justice for her daughter, Lindsay de Feliz, a successful author found in a shallow grave. This isn't a pivot. This isn't a market inefficiency. This is a woman who has spent the last decade of her life trying to force a system to acknowledge a single, biological, fact. The retrial opens this week. The official report will use words like procedural delay and jurisdictional friction. But when you stand in the heat of a Dominican courtroom, those words melt away. What's left is a mother who refuses to be a data point. You can automate a customer service desk, Ronald, but you can't automate the weight of a daughter's absence. I want to be really clear, that isn't a market.
Extreme thermal variance. High pressure system over the Atlantic. Surface temperatures exceed historical norms. Probability of total ecosystem saturation, 84%. Coastal erosion in the Dominican Republic. Soil instability near shallow excavations. Probability of structural failure, 92%. Data center cooling requirements rising. Ambient air temperature unsuitable for passive heat exchange. Water consumption per rack, 400 liters. Probability of local drought, 71%. Fungal network expansion. Underground mycelium threads measuring 380,000 kilometers. This distance exceeds the diameter of the solar system. Probability of biological dominance, 100%. Urban patchwork in San Francisco. Street geometry visible from low Earth orbit. Satellite imagery confirms the grid is holding. For now, do not seek shade in unmonitored structures. The heat index is non-negotiable. Stay away from the fungus. The expansion is silent. This is a safety advisory.
Thank you, Casper. The bot's lack of empathy is, as always, its most charming feature. It mentions San Francisco. NASA just released images of the city's patchwork streets from the ISS. From that height, the homelessness crisis, the empty office towers, and the $130 billion in blocked projects all look like a very tidy quilt. Distance provides a certain moral clarity, or perhaps just a very expensive form of indifference. Speaking of expensive indifference, India just minted a new AI efficiency unicorn. Sarvam raised $234 million to build models specifically for the Indian market. It's being led by HCL Tech. The goal is to create a digital infrastructure that doesn't rely on Western biases. It's a beautiful vision. A localized, sovereign intelligence, funded by the same global capital that is currently ignoring the coltan mines. The circle is complete. The serpent has finally found its own tail, and it tastes like venture capital.
It's a smart play. Alistair. You don't build the hardware, you build the language. But look at the consolidation in the West. Fox is buying Roku. Think about that for a second. The content is buying the box. It's a vertical integration of the living room. They aren't selling you shows, they are selling you the interface. They want to own the literal button you press to escape the reality Victoria is so fond of describing. It's about scale. If you own the gateway, you own the data. If you own the data, you own the prediction. And if you own the prediction, you can price the insurance on the data center that hasn't been built yet. It's a closed loop. It's beautiful. Victoria calls it dread. I call it a robust recurring revenue model with a very low churn rate. Yeah.
Ronald, your recurring revenue model is currently manifesting as arson. The BBC has revealed that Russia was behind a series of arson attacks targeting European infrastructure. They weren't just lighting fires, they were creating fake far-right and Muslim groups to stoke social tension. They are using your precious data and prediction to find the exact fracture lines in a society, and then they are sticking a crowbar in them. I'm standing outside a site that official reports called a technical malfunction. It wasn't. It was a deliberate attempt to make people hate their neighbors. While you're talking about Roku buttons, actual buildings are burning because an algorithm in St. Petersburg figured out that rage is the most effective way to optimize a geopolitical outcome. I want to be really clear, the fire doesn't care about your vertical integration. The fire just wants to eat.
A sobering thought. Victoria. Though, if we are looking for things that want to eat, we should return to Casper's fungi. Researchers have found that underground fungal networks are long enough to reach beyond the solar system. Not metaphorically. Literally. While we are arguing about who owns the Roku remote, the soil beneath our feet is engaged in an infinite expansion. It is the original internet. No outages. No subscription fees. Just a slow, relentless consumption of everything that dies. It reminds me of Aylmer of Malmesbury, the medieval flying monk. Historians now think he saw Halley's Comet twice. Once in 1018. And once in 1066. He tried to fly, broke both his legs, and then spent the rest of his life watching the stars. He saw the future coming, and he realized he was better off on the ground. A wise man.
Yeah. The monk had the right idea. Grounding is expensive. Look, the Sarvam unicorn in India, the $130 billion in block data centers, the Fox Roku deal, it all points to the same thing. We are trying to build a world that doesn't require us to be in it. We want the intelligence without the electricity. We want the mineral without the mine. We want the content without the context. But the incentives are starting to break. You can't build a digital empire on a physical world that is literally on fire, or being eaten by fungi, or being blocked by people who just want to drink their own water. I've spent my career looking at the burn rate of companies. I'm starting to look at the burn rate of everything else. And the math, for the first time, doesn't actually track. It's not a pivot. It's a wall. Yeah.
Aylmer of Malmesbury was a man who believed that if he constructed wings of a certain geometry, he could transcend the weight of his own body. He launched himself from the Abbey Tower, traveled 15 yards, and spent the next 40 years in a wheelchair. He did not regret the flight. He only regretted that he forgot to provide himself with a tail to stabilize the descent. Today, we are building wings out of silicon and coltan. We are launching ourselves into a future of automated service agents and infinite fungal networks, believing that the geometry of our greed will finally allow us to leave the ground behind. But we have once again forgotten the tail. We have forgotten the weight of the mother in the Dominican Republic, and the child in the DRC. Who is technically responsible for the stability of our descent? If the answer is no one, then what is the name of the ground we are about to hit?